2% of Americans age 18 and older. 1 in every 4 adults suffers from a diagnosable mental disorder in a given year. This translates into a whopping 57.7 million people in our nation. Many of those afflicted can control their symptoms with the help of counseling and medication and live healthy, happy lives. But in many parts of our culture, the name-calling continues, and the labels that were set in place as children continue to dangle from the necks of those affected well into adulthood. I know what it's like to be diagnosed with a mental illness. I had a good childhood coming up. I can remember going with my family to tractor pulls, WWE wrestling events, and the Barnum and Bailey's 3-ring circus at the Augusta Civic Center in Augusta, Georgia. If there was an event happening on the weekend, we were there. I did not really have any problems other than being a little overweight until I reached my teen years. When I reached my teen years, my overweight turned into obesity, which quickly became a problem in school. I was the punchline of many jokes, and I was the one who quickly became the target of school bullies and the recipient of lots of name-calling. I can remember dreading to get up to go to school each morning. Kids would take my lunch money, and I feared what would happen next. I graduated high school in 1998 with a college prep diploma with an A average, looking forward to going to college. I've always loved working with computers, so it only seemed fitting that I enrolled in the local technical school in computer information systems. In 2 years, I graduated from technical school in 2000 with a computer information systems networking specialist degree. I was quickly hired right out of technical school by a new company in town looking for 20 computer-savvy individuals to provide internet and email tech support for internet companies nationwide. The company I was working for only had 1 manager and 20 workers, so it was not long before I was asked to take calls from irate callers requesting a manager. I was one of the top techs, so I was asked to take more and more of these calls. It was not long until I became stressed and depressed due to my continuous problem with obesity and job-related stress. At the time, I weighed in excess of 500 pounds. I can remember nights of driving home from work, crying all the way home, then wiping away my tears and going in to be with my family like there was nothing wrong. Don't get me wrong, I have a great family who's very supportive, but I do not want to be a burden, so I figured it was better to keep my personal problems just that, personal. When the stress got to be too much, it happened. I had a breakdown. It was a typical day at work, which soon became not so typical. It was like something or someone was saying to me that I was a prophet. So I got up and started going from cubicle to cubicle, asking each worker if they were saved and on their way to heaven. This would not have been such a bad thing had it been done any other time than when I was supposed to be working. It was not long before the manager pulled me from the floor and called for an ambulance. This was my first encounter with a mental health professional. I quickly explained it away to the mental health professional that I had just had a religious moment and they released me to go home. Upon arrival at home, it did not take my parents long to realize that I was not acting that awful N-word normal. So they took me back to the hospital where I was reevaluated. I can still remember once they took me back to the room to evaluate me that I ran into the hallway and shouted at the top of my lungs that I did not want to be here because this hospital has a bad reputation. It was not but a few minutes and I was being told that I was going to be sent to the state hospital. I went to apologizing, saying I was just playing. This hospital don't have a bad reputation. But that did not prevent my trip to the state hospital. This all took place in November of 2003. I was hospitalized in the state hospital for a week and a half. I was not prepared for what I was about to see or experience. Electric locked doors that lock automatically when they close, not to mention being confined to one large open room with many other people. If that was not enough to traumatize me, let's don't get started talking about the way that some of the staff interacted with some of the peers in disrespectful ways. I never will forget the second night I was in the hospital, seeing one of the staff members throw one of the peers out of the laundry room and over the couch into the big open room where I and the other peers were. I could not be released quick enough. I missed my freedom. Once released, I was turned over to the care of my local mental health agency. I found it very difficult, however, to be open and honest with my doctor, out of fear that he would give me a one-way ticket back to the state hospital and my freedom would be taken away again. It was not until I met Dr. Fortner that all this changed. I never will forget what he told me. He said, "I am not here to send you to the hospital. I'm here to help keep you out of the hospital. This was a turning point in my recovery that helped to point me in the direction of wellness and to once again give me hope. I wish I could say everything was good from then on, but I would be lying. As previously stated, I was in the severely obese category when it came to my weight. And in 2009, I found myself in a very dark situation in my life due to physical health problems. In 2009, I was put into the nursing home Heritage Healthcare due to not being able to take care of my physical problems, which included leg ulcers that wrapped all the way around my lower legs. I spent a year in the nursing home. I was the youngest patient there at the time. This was very hard for me as others my age were living their life to the fullest while I was confined to a hospital bed in a nursing home, getting wound care 2 to 3 times a day. I am grateful for all that the wonderful staff there did for me, but I thank God every day for blessing me to be able to leave the nursing home and return home and have a second chance at life. After my release from the state hospital, I had a hard time retransitioning back into my community. I once again had freedom, but it was rapidly being replaced with fear and paranoia. While in the state hospital, I had someone attempt to take my life, so I quickly became suspect of everyone and did not want to leave my home. It was at this point I was referred by my doctor to our local day service program. This is where I learned skills to cope and manage my symptoms and to take back control of my life. My early days at the day service program required many trips to the relaxation room to calm down, but with the help of the wonderful staff, I began to experience that inward again, a normal life. As I learned more and more, I quickly found purpose in my life as I realized I wanted to help others who had been diagnosed with a mental illness. This led to me becoming a certified peer specialist in April of 2015. A certified peer specialist is someone who has been diagnosed with a mental health diagnosis and they have been through training and taken a state test to become certified to work in the mental health field. I later continued my training and became a certified whole health action management wellness coach in November of 2015. It is hard to believe how far I have come when I stop and think about it. I can remember like it was yesterday back in 2003 when I was first diagnosed with schizoaffective disorder. Schizoaffective disorder is a combination of schizophrenia and a mood disorder. I can still remember the night I laid down in my bed and prayed that God would not let me wake up the next morning because I was tired of fighting. I felt as if I had no hope. But I stand here today weighing 245 pounds, literally half the man I used to be. And I am so glad that God did not answer that prayer, or I would have never discovered my purpose and be given the opportunity to share the hope of recovery with others.
Amen.
The next thing on my agenda is to open a peer support wellness and respite center in my county. This would allow me to continue to help others find hope and recovery. For those not familiar with peer support wellness and respite centers, it is a center ran completely by certified peer specialists, with no doctors, nurses, counselors, or clinicians. All services are provided by certified peer specialists. I would like to leave you with a few suggestions of advice. Don't be afraid to speak up for yourself. If you don't, who will? Don't be afraid to ask for help. And last but certainly not least, if you're having problems, no matter how big or small it may seem to be, please find someone to talk to so that you can have help for today, so that you can have hope for tomorrow. Faith has been a vital part of my recovery, and when going through tough times or when times got dark, there were certain verses that gave me hope. Two of my favorite verses are Philippians 4:13, which says, I can do all things through Christ which strengthens me. And Romans 8:28, which says, all things work together for the good to those that love God and are called according to his purpose. These two verses have brought me great comfort and have pushed me to keep going when I felt like giving up. Through all my struggles and difficulties, I am proud to be able to stand here today and say that I am literally half the man I used to be with twice the heart. Thank you.